Look at this and not understand the law fully. They may say, we heard the prosecution present their argument that it was Kyle Rittenhouse who came there, who had this gun, who provoked essentially these men who he ultimately shot coming at him. Why doesn't that hold water? At least the jury decided that that didn't cut it.
Well, ultimately, what this comes down to, and I believe what it likely came down to for the jury was Kyle Rittenhouse's claimed belief, the belief that he alleged on the stand, that he was an imminent threat of danger or an imminent threat of losing his life, such that he had to respond with lethal force to defend himself. Was that reasonable? If you recall, there was testimony and during his cross-examination where they talked about how the gun was being held and whether it was being held sideways. The prosecutor in that moment attempted to try and suggest that because the gun was being held sideways like you might see in a movie, that somehow that made Rittenhouse's belief that his life was in danger less plausible. But obviously, when it came to what the jury thought, what the jury felt in terms of how they reviewed this case, they still believed that Rittenhouse was reasonable in his feeling that his life was in danger and that it required the use of deadly force. And so because of that, the provocation charge that they were read ultimately was outweighed by Rittenhouse's claims of self-defense.
Bob Bianchi, who is also with us, reminder he is a criminal defense lawyer, has been a former prosecutor. What do you see as the key moment in this trial that may have been a tipping point for jurors?
I like to talk the difference between a narrative and facts, as your correspondent is so eloquently reporting. We've been watching every detail of the facts, not what was being reported, speculation, not about the politics of it. And as your other guests are commenting, I want to go to that provocation. If he's engaging in unlawful conduct, I'm reading it right now, that provokes others to attack. And then there's a line in there that's very, very important. It indicates that a belief may be reasonable, even if mistaken. So when Kyle Rittenhouse gets on the stand, after 3 of the government's witnesses had indicated that he was being chased, they were screaming and yelling at him, hitting him with skateboards, getting kicked in the face by the jump kick man, shots being fired behind him. There were opportunities that he had to use the weapon where the people backed away and he didn't fire the weapon. To all, whether they're on the liberal side or conservative side, of trial lawyers who have ever tried cases, these jury instructions are not that unique. In virtually, I would imagine, every state, given the burden of proof and the presumption of innocence in this country, the prosecution, I know in Jersey, has to disprove self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt to all 12 jurors. How do you do that when you saw no real provocation going on, him not threatening anybody? He's taking care of graffitis, walking around with a medical kit. I think he came off as like a cop wannabe. But in the end analysis, they're the ones pursuing him. And the government's witnesses themselves were saying they were in fear for his life because of the people were throwing rocks at him and he was being pursued. He's running away. Come on. There's just it's not about narratives. It's unfortunate that narratives is a tail wagging the dog here. It's the facts that came out during the course of the case that showed that those narratives were in large part completely inaccurate. And so this jury did its job by looking at the facts, taking its time, deliberating over the evidence. And even though it may have been a mistaken belief, they believe Kyle Rittenhouse, under those circumstances, felt not only death, but great bodily harm. A lot of people are missing that. That could be a protracted loss or impairment of a physical body, member, or organ, what have you. And when he's down on the ground and people are grabbing his weapon and he's been threatened already and he's trying to run away and he can't go anywhere, there wasn't a real trial lawyer. I'm talking about a trial lawyer that's really tried cases, that didn't sit here and say, this is an amazingly good self-defense case. And the sign of desperation for the prosecution was when they asked for the lesser included offenses. After Rittenhouse testified, they knew their self-defense claim was going down in flames, and they were hoping, I'm telling you, this is what goes on as a trial tactic, that they would give the jurors an opportunity, instead of saying not guilty on everything and guilty of the highest charges. They knew they had difficulty with this case, so they wanted to give them a middle ground that they could land on, hopefully, so that they would convict them of something. But there just wasn't the facts here to support it, irrespective of the narratives.
Okay, so obviously we are looking at images, live images right now outside the courthouse there in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where we can see there are a number of people gathered, obviously a lot of media there who is reporting on the outcome of this trial. Not guilty on all counts. Kyle Rittenhouse now a free 18-year-old man. And we've also seen protesters, but not a lot. A number of people who are there with signs who were perhaps hoping for a different outcome here. But the jurors, they looked at the law, they looked at the jury instructions, they reviewed several pieces of evidence as they were deliberating over the course of 4 days, 25 hours. Not guilty on all charges. The end of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. The news continues right now with Allison Camerata.